Shaquille O'Neal, 53 years old, towers over every room he enters, but the world would never guess the battle he fights daily. Not on the basketball court, not in front of thousands of screaming fans, but in the quiet of his own life. He has $400 million in the bank, and yet Shaq struggles. Not because he doesn't have money, he has more than enough to live in luxury forever, but because he can't find a reason to spend it on himself. While the world imagines him cruising in Lamborghinis and dining in five-star restaurants, he's quietly clipping coupons for burgers and hunting for deals at Walmart. The legend of the NBA seems absurdly out of place in these small, humble routines. A man who dominated hardwood courts now sits on his couch eating chips, watching TV, completely detached from the trappings of fame. Yet behind this simplicity hides a plan that could shock even the most loyal fans. Shaq isn't hoarding for fear or ego. Every dollar he touches is earmarked for those who need it most. Veterans without a roof over their heads, families struggling to keep food on the table, children in low-income schools who deserve a place to learn, play, and dream. His Shaq Foundation has already touched 5,000 lives, building homes, gyms, and even covering rent for those who can't make ends meet. And he isn't stopping there. Imagine a billionaire who actively avoids luxury, who chooses the smallest, most practical items over designer labels, not for humility, but because his real currency is the lives he changes. Shaq's generosity is quiet but monumental, and every act of charity carries a weight far heavier than any NBA trophy. And yet, despite all the good, there's tension. How did a man so adored, so financially unstoppable, decide to live so differently from every expectation? Why turn away from the indulgences that wealth can buy? What drives him to live in such simplicity, while wielding so much power to impact the world? The answers lie not in his past championships, but in the choices he makes every day. Choices that reveal a side of Shaquille O'Neal the world rarely sees. In a life filled with fame, fortune, and endless opportunity, Shaq's most shocking story isn't on the court. It's in how he spends every dollar he earns. Shaquille O'Neal wasn't born a giant in wealth or wisdom. He was born in Newark, New Jersey, to a teenage mother and a man he would barely know. From the start, life demanded more from him than it did from others. The streets were unforgiving, schools were overcrowded, and every corner seemed to whisper that dreams were luxuries only for someone else. Even as a child, Shaq stood out, not just in size, but in spirit. He could have used his height to intimidate or escape, but he learned early that real strength meant responsibility. His stepfather, Philip Harrison, became a figure of guidance and discipline, teaching him lessons he would carry into adulthood: respect, humility, and the weight of helping others. Growing up, Shaq witnessed poverty firsthand. Families scraping by, friends losing hope, children going to bed hungry. These experiences left a mark that money could never erase. While other kids dreamed of toys and gadgets, Shaq dreamed of making a difference, even before he had the means to do so. Basketball became both an escape and a promise. Every dribble, every dunk, every hard-fought win on the court was a step toward a life where he could change the narrative. Not just for himself, but for countless others who faced the same struggles he did. But the foundation for his generosity wasn't built in a boardroom or a charity gala. It was built on the quiet streets of Newark, in the cramped apartments where he saw the world's inequalities up close. By high school, he was already aware of the paradox that would define his life. Wealth and fame could give him everything, yet without purpose, they were empty. The lessons of his youth, gratitude for small things, empathy for those less fortunate, and the determination to use whatever power he gained responsibly, would shape every choice Shaq would make after he left the court. And even as recruiters lined up, promising fame and fortune, Shaq never forgot those streets, those families, those early nights of struggle. Every future contract, every endorsement, every championship banner carried the echoes of his roots. Before Shaquille O'Neal could change the world with millions, he first had to survive a childhood that taught him the true value of every dollar and every life. Shaquille O'Neal's life changed the moment he stepped onto the basketball court as a teenager at Robert G. Cole High School in San Antonio, Texas. His height, agility, and sheer presence made scouts take notice. But it wasn't just talent that set him apart. It was an unshakable drive shaped by a childhood of struggle. By the time he reached LSU, Shaq wasn't just playing basketball. He was proving that a boy from hardship could dominate a world that seemed built for the privileged. Every dunk, every block, every highlight reel was a statement. He belonged here. But with opportunity came pressure. Fame whispered seductively, promising money, glamour, and recognition. Shaq had to choose carefully, not only for himself, but for the future he envisioned, where wealth could serve more than just his own comfort. It was during those college years that the first glimpses of his unique character emerged. While other stars flaunted their growing wealth, Shaq shopped modestly, lived simply, and spent time mentoring younger players. He saw basketball not as an escape, but as a tool, a way to create opportunities, to open doors for himself and, eventually, for others. The NBA draft became his proving ground. When the Orlando Magic called his name in 1992, the world gasped. A 7-on-1 young man with the charisma of a superstar and the heart of someone who had already seen too much suffering was now stepping onto a global stage. Shaq could have lost himself in fame instantly, but the roots of humility and empathy held firm. Even as rookie contracts rolled in, Shaq quietly started thinking beyond his own comfort. He noticed teammates struggling financially, fans who reached out in need, and communities overlooked by the spotlight. These moments planted the first seeds of what would eventually become the Shaq Foundation, a blueprint for generosity rooted in lived experience. But fame and fortune brought their own test. Could Shaq navigate the intense scrutiny of the media, the temptations of wealth, and the expectations of the public without losing the core of who he was? Every decision, every endorsement, every public appearance became part of a delicate balancing act between becoming a legend and remaining true to the boy who had watched families struggle to survive. Shaquille O'Neal had conquered the first big stage, but the real challenge was just beginning. How to wield unimaginable wealth and fame without losing the heart that made him care in the first place. Shaquille O'Neal's rise was meteoric. From Orlando to Los Angeles, from rookie to superstar, he became more than a basketball player. He became a global icon. Fans adored his size, his power, his charisma. Every slam dunk, every block, every viral moment cemented his place in history. Endorsements flowed in. Commercials, sneakers, movies. Shaq was everywhere. Yet behind the glitz and glitter, there was a cost few could see. Long hours, relentless training, constant travel. Each championship came with exhaustion that seeped into personal life. Relationships frayed, birthdays were missed. Quiet nights with his children became rare treasures. The world celebrated the superstar, but the man behind the jersey often felt invisible, even to those who loved him most. Money poured in, but spending it on himself felt meaningless. Cars, clothes, and luxury items were temptations he consistently ignored. Instead, Shaq measured wealth by its power to help others. The boy who once watched neighbors struggle now had the ability to change lives on a massive scale. And he intended to. Even in the midst of fame, the pressure was suffocating. Critics scrutinized every decision, teammates clashed, and personal life headlines threatened to overshadow achievements on the court. Each victory required sacrifice. Each banner hung in the arena whispered a reminder. Success had a price, and the ledger extended beyond dollars. Still, Shaq thrived. He mastered the balance between public spectacle and private purpose. While fans saw him as a playful giant, someone larger than life, those close to him knew the depth of his character. Humility, humor, and an unwavering sense of responsibility defined the man behind the myth. Every choice, on and off the court, was informed by his desire to live with meaning. And yet, no amount of wealth or fame could fill the spaces left by time lost with family. Every dollar spent on luxury was a dollar not used to create lasting impact. Every accolade was a reminder of what had been traded for success. The stage was dazzling, but the shadows lingered. Shaquille O'Neal had reached the pinnacle of basketball glory, but the true test was coming. How to wield his fortune and fame without losing the very heart that defined him. Despite towering over his competition on the court, Shaquille O'Neal faced battles off the hardwood that no fan could see. Fame created an illusion of invincibility, but behind closed doors, the pressures of wealth, expectation, and family weighed heavily. Divorces, strained relationships, and misunderstandings marked his personal life. Some of his children grew up distant, struggling to reconcile the absence of a father with the legend they saw on television. The man who inspired millions with his charisma and power now faced the quiet ache of missed moments, birthdays uncelebrated, milestones unseen, conversations never had. Endorsements and media attention brought scrutiny at every turn. Every action, from his fashion choices to his charitable giving, became a headline. The more he achieved, the higher the stakes. Every mistake felt magnified, every decision questioned. Even his generosity, his attempts to do good, was dissected under a microscope. In the midst of fame, Shaq confronted vulnerability. There were nights when the laughter faded, and the loneliness of a superstar became undeniable. Money could buy comfort, but not connection. Power could command respect, but not love. And yet, these trials planted the seeds of his greatest strength, empathy. He understood now, more than ever, the fragility of human experience and the responsibility that came with his fortune. While the public saw a giant laughing on talk shows and courtside cheering, Shaq quietly reflected on the true cost of his rise. His fall was not a scandal or a failure in the traditional sense. It was the collision between celebrity and humanity, between what the world expected and what his heart longed for. But even in these moments of struggle, Shaq's vision remained clear. The setbacks were not endings. They were lessons. They revealed the importance of connection, of using privilege for purpose, and of ensuring that his children, and the countless others who looked up to him, would not repeat the same mistakes. Shaquille O'Neal had faced the shadows of fame, but the path to redemption and the chance to transform both wealth and heart was only beginning. Shaquille O'Neal could have retired quietly, basking in the glow of his NBA legacy, endorsements, and fortune. But Shaq was never content with the spotlight alone. He craved purpose. After facing personal struggles and the isolation fame brought, he began a comeback. Not to the court, but to the life he had long neglected. Family, community, and humanity itself. The first steps were subtle. Calls to children he hadn't spoken to in years. Visits to neighborhoods where his presence alone inspired awe and hope. Small gestures became symbolic bridges, mending gaps that time and absence had carved. He realized that his true influence wasn't measured by points scored or trophies lifted, but by lives touched and futures transformed. This vision crystallized in the form of the Shaq Foundation, Shaq's bold initiative to channel his wealth into meaningful change. Homes for families who had nowhere to sleep, gyms and facilities for schools in low-income neighborhoods, rent payments for veterans, food, supplies, and aid for disaster-stricken communities. Each act of giving reflected the lessons he learned from his own humble beginnings, a reminder that empathy and action mattered more than fame. Shaq's comeback also meant reshaping his own lifestyle. Extravagance was replaced by practicality. Luxury cars and designer brands were irrelevant. Generosity became the currency by which he measured life. He shopped at Walmart, clipped coupons, and laughed at the absurdity of spending for show. His joy came from seeing a child smile, a family move into a home, or a school gym echo with the sounds of young athletes chasing dreams. Even the public began to notice. Stories emerged of Shaq quietly funding scholarships, donating millions to food banks, and transforming entire communities without fanfare. The same giant who once intimidated opponents on the court now carried a gentle power, a force of change rooted in humility and vision. And yet, the journey was far from over. Each effort, each act of kindness carried a test. Could he balance fame, wealth, and personal life while continuing to uplift those who depended on him? Could he maintain the discipline required to ensure that his comeback wasn't just symbolic, but transformative? Shaquille O'Neal had risen from the shadows of personal struggle, but the defining moment of his life, one that would show the world the true measure of his heart, was still ahead. It wasn't a championship game. It wasn't a slam dunk or a record-breaking score. The moment that defined Shaquille O'Neal's legacy beyond basketball came quietly, yet it reverberated across the world. A news clip surfaced showing Shaq walking into a low-income school. Sneakers scuffed, jeans casual, his smile wide and genuine. Behind him, banners proclaimed the opening of new gyms he had personally funded. Children poured in, eyes wide, some clutching basketballs worn thin, others simply staring at the man who had once seemed untouchable on screens. Cameras captured Shaq kneeling, speaking with students, listening to teachers, and giving high fives with an authenticity that no trophy or endorsement could match. Social media erupted. Headlines celebrated the gentle giant, who traded flashy headlines for tangible impact. Millions saw him delivering food to families, paying rent for struggling veterans, and providing school supplies to children who had none. It wasn't just the scale of giving, it was the sincerity, the humility, the understanding that money alone isn't power, but action is. The Shaq Foundation's work became viral not because Shaq wanted credit, but because the world could not ignore the magnitude of his generosity. Stories emerged of families whose lives were changed forever. Children who had no place to play could now dribble, laugh, and dream. Veterans who struggled to make ends meet could finally rest. Entire communities felt his presence in ways that transcended fame. Yet, even in these moments of triumph, Shaq remained grounded. Interviews revealed a man who still shopped for bargains, who still enjoyed simple pleasures at home, and who measured success not by wealth, but by the lives touched. He had transformed from an idol on the court to a hero in real life, proving that generosity could eclipse notoriety. And behind the viral videos and headlines lay a more intimate story. Shaq's relationships with his children were slowly repairing. Calls, visits, and shared experiences began bridging years of absence. The public celebration mirrored the private victories. Connections rebuilt, bonds strengthened, and hearts mended. Shaquille O'Neal had captured the world's admiration. But the true depth of his journey, what he had learned about love, family, and purpose, was only beginning to be revealed. Shaquille O'Neal's life is more than championships, sneakers, and stadium lights. It is a testament to purpose, humility, and the quiet power of generosity. Years of struggle, fame, and scrutiny shaped him, but it was the conscious choice to put others first that defined his true legacy. For Shaq, money has never been about luxury or ego. It is a tool, a means to create impact where it matters most. The child who once watched neighbors struggle now has the resources to lift thousands, building homes, gyms, and opportunities that transform futures. Each act of giving carries intention, reflecting lessons learned from poverty, family challenges, and the absence of stability in his own youth. His philosophy is simple yet profound. Wealth without empathy is hollow. Fame without responsibility is empty. Happiness is not measured by what you take, but by what you leave behind. This understanding informs every decision, from mundane shopping trips to multi-million-dollar donations. Shaq's life demonstrates that power, when guided by compassion, can shape a world far beyond personal gain. Family, too, has become central to his meaning. Once distant from his children due to fame and career demands, Shaq now invests time and energy into reconnecting. Moments on the court with his kids, shared laughter over simple meals, and guidance in life's decisions reveal a man who understands that wealth cannot replace presence. His relationships, strengthened by intentionality, illustrate that legacy is not built in headlines, but in bonds nurtured quietly over time. Shaq's transformation also teaches resilience. Every setback, every criticism, every personal struggle became a lesson in patience, empathy, and strategic action. He learned that the greatest victories are not measured by applause, but by the enduring positive effects one leaves in the lives of others. Ultimately, Shaquille O'Neal's story reminds the world that true greatness is not in domination, but in service. The giant who once towered over opponents now towers in spirit, guiding communities, lifting families, and proving that the heart of a hero is measured in deeds, not dollars. Shaq's journey is far from over, and the final chapter, the legacy that will define him for generations, is waiting to be revealed. Shaquille O'Neal stands not just as a basketball legend, but as a testament to purpose, generosity, and the quiet strength of humility. The courts, the arenas, and the record books tell only part of his story. The real Shaq is found in the lives he touches, the communities he lifts, and the children whose dreams he nurtures. From a boy growing up in Newark, facing hardship and uncertainty, to a global superstar, Shaq's journey has been extraordinary. Yet the most remarkable transformation isn't in his fame, it's in his heart. Each home built, each meal provided, each opportunity created speaks louder than any trophy. Money, to him, is a means to an end, a bridge connecting privilege with purpose. He has redefined what it means to be a hero, not with accolades or headline-grabbing stunts, but through deliberate, compassionate choices that ripple far beyond the spotlight. Shaq's wealth, once imagined as a symbol of luxury, has become a tool for change. His Shaq Foundation, his personal sacrifices, and his everyday humility remind the world that impact matters more than image. Even in retirement, Shaq's presence is felt everywhere, from school gyms echoing with the laughter of children, to veterans finally finding stability, to communities discovering hope. He has become a living example that success is measured not by what you keep, but by what you give. And as he watches his children grow, reconnecting and guiding them with patience and care, Shaq realizes that true legacy isn't in headlines or net worth. It's in the hearts he has touched, the bonds he has rebuilt, and the countless lives uplifted through his choices. In the end, Shaquille O'Neal's story is not only about basketball or billions. It is about a man who understood early on that the world would measure him by more than points and fame. It will remember him for the courage to live differently, the wisdom to act compassionately, and the humility to remain grounded while changing countless lives. In a world chasing fortune and fame, Shaquille O'Neal proves that the greatest power lies in giving, and that a true giant is measured by the lives he lifts, not the scoreboard he dominates.